For a heart-stopping moment, Clementine feared that they'd tie him to the nearest tree to her and Kenny's location, but it seemed that they chose the one on the opposite side. Held a sigh in relief, but it did some of the adrenaline in her veins to dissolve. Troy didn't even struggle. They retrieved the rope from the truck and shoved him towards the trunk of the tree, and he just stood there through it, allowing himself to be handled roughly and restrained. It's as if he couldn't do much with one arm, but he was lawfully in a complaint for someone to argue commentative. But he didn't even speak. He just let him pin to the tree. Once he was secured, Tavia sighed and calmly closed her eyes. "So you really couldn't break your weak ties with them," she murmured. "I assume you had some sort of sense preservation that would recognize who was safest to ally with, but you were just playing with us all along, weren't you?" To everyone's supplies, including Clementine, and Troy started to chuckle, and it was low and raspy, not to mention out of place, and Clementine wasn't sure if she was hearing the feigns at first, but then it grew louder and more distinct, until he was full at the verge of laughing in Tavia's face, almost as if she didn't have time to react to him in an offended way. Her face only showed puzzlement. Tyler and Vera exchanged a glance, their eyes a bit wide and so confused. Troy's cackling finally died down as she shook his head, snickers still escaping from his lips. "Well, now you got me, Tavia," he said with a dramatic sigh. "I was playing you, in fact. I was the puppet master the whole frickin' time. I was under your noses, and you saw none of it." Tyler blinked, stepping forward a bit. "So you were planning on releasing the prisoners this whole time? When did you ever come up with this scheme?" "Well, I like to know it as well," Tavia said, almost her voice as a growl. "I was planning on leaving House with them at the very beginning. All my plans leading us to meeting here, Tavia." Troy then smirked, confusing Clementine. She knew better than anyone else hadn't planned on leaving with them originally. "What is he doing?" she wondered. "Wait, you were willingly left with them? I thought they cut your arm off," Tyler pointed out, looking just as lost as Clementine felt. Troy shrugged, one-shouldered. "One of what?" he asked, blaring his teeth, and not so happy grin. "This whole plan of mine is starting to weigh back at House, but after a bit I killed my brother. Shortly after Bill had me running the guards, I predicted this would all happen. I was pretending to mess up and got Bill on my bad side, because I knew the herd would change things, and I heard those prisoners would come back, and I knew I would have to go with them, and the time was right, so I did, and I figured you idiots would follow us and capture us again. So I gained your trust and went with Lau, killed him just to bring you all back, and I waited here for you to come and get to me. Predictable as always, Tavia." Tavia narrowed her eyes for a moment, and her eyebrows scrunched down in confusion. After giving a brief glance to her colleagues, she then turned back to Troy. "All right, I'm going to stop you right there, because I think you've been smoking something, or you just hit your frickin' head. So please tell me, in all the hell's name, you think you're talking about, Troy?" Troy just chuckled again, prompting Vera to snap. "Are you being serious?" He scoffed in response, with a smirk on his face, not fading in the slightest. Nah, of course not. I'm just fucking with you all." He paused, letting the words sink in before continuing. "Well, actually, I should say first I'm flattered. I'm really fucking ecstatic that you think I'd be capable of that shit. But it was all bullshit. None of this was planned. Just a spur-of-the-moment kind of thing, you know?" Now Tavia's eyes then shut up in surprise. "Excuse me? I was just messing around," Troy repeated, snorting. "I ain't very good at telling tales, but I guess you were just that dumb." "So it wasn't planned," Tyler muttered. Troy shook his head. "Nope, not really. Not even just letting me go, it was sort of happened. When I was given the rope to tie to the truck shut, I decided to let it whim and use my shitty piece of string instead to let the door open itself, and yeah, I wanted to do it at that moment, but when you asked me to come back originally, I wasn't planning nothing. I was just gonna go back and be a guard." Troy shrugged, gritting an ear despite himself. "Guess my brain decided to switch for a moment and realized whose side I wanted to be on at the end." "I hope your brain came up to the conclusion that we're your only allies you have ever had, Troy, and we have your best interest in mind," Tavia said, although gritted her teeth and narrowing her eyes. Troy struggled again. "I ain't too sure if Bill was still around and saw how I messed up the yard outside, getting a bit loose and losing my arm, and, well, I would have been stuck in the pen for months." William Carver had rules that were effective, Troy, Tavia spat. If you didn't perform well enough and you didn't deserve the privileges, so everyone tried their hardest, and his system worked. Troy worked convinced. Maybe, but if it wasn't that great, then if people were so desperate to get out, he pointed out. Don't give me that shit, Tavia chastised. You were perfectly fine with your guard position. You were on top of the fence and did your duties fine, and you seemed to enjoy pushing the prisoners around in the yard. Frowning, Troy muttered, Yeah, well, maybe House was a good fit for me. Maybe I can't function outside a great community telling me what to do, but shit. Once I started to get away from it, it's like I wanted to feel differently. Differently? How? With those folks, I started to feel less than a guard and more like, well, Troy, he said, studying the ground. It was kinda nice. Yes, I'm sure you were so useful to them, Vera snarked under her breath, speaking up for the first time in a while. Those folks fucked everything up, Troy, Tavia added angrily, and we're doing all just fine without those parasites decided to kill our leader. With a scowl, Troy hissed, Them parasites saved my life. They brought me to them and took care of me when I was dying. I owe them a debt I ain't never going to be able to repay. He then shook his head. I lost the sight of all that mushy shit mean to me. I found myself again when I was given another chance to save them all in return. So I went for it. Tavia then rubbed the bridge of her nose in exasperation, clearly irritated by Troy's change of perspective. Have you forgotten, you idiot? You wouldn't have had a life for them to save if it all wasn't for Bill. He's the one who took you in, gave you a job and a gun, and gave you a purpose. She unclosed her eyes briefly, letting out a noisy sigh. And you turn around and betray that trust and companionship so genuinely give it to you? Troy nodded, but still not arguing with her. How did I? And if he were here, I may even say sorry for that, I don't know. Believe me, I'm thankful to him, and that's why I'm still alive. But goddamn, Tavia, that's all I am. Tavia raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? At House, there was nothing to me. A man desperate to stay alive to do anything. And I mean anything. Troy's expression melted into a scowl. You know what? Screw that. I'm tired of giving other people my orders. I'm making the choice here. Rolling her eyes, and Tavia asked, And what is this choice of yours, Troy? Well, I already made it, Troy said with a wide grin upon his face, and it was easy to talk to you people long enough to stall so that you'll never find your precious prisoners. Tavia's face then went faintly red for a moment, and her fists took at her sides. She was clearly trying to control herself, losing her eyes and in her breath, before letting out slowly through her nose the furious expression when she stopped in her eyes and was quite frightening. Her violent intentions were all that clear once. I see, she said, through her clenched teeth. Troy then sneered in his face, just mocking Tavia and the guards. I reckon they're miles away by now. Tavia then stayed the ground for a moment, then gazed back up at Troy. I reckon you won't be seeing them again, she tisked. Her words almost sad. I'm not ashamed that you admit that you were one of the best guards, so this is hard on me. The one-armed man shrugged, unfazed. Thanks for the praise, but I think Bill had a better way with words. Clementine felt uneasiness begin to stir in her stomach as the glares they were sending to him, and all the way changed his glances once another and nodded in illusion. Tavia shot a disgusted look toward the man tied to a tree and growled, Shoot his knees and leave him for the lurkers. Vera smirked with nodding. With pleasure. Once you're done, head back down the road. Once we're originally found the prisoners, Tavia instructed, I'm going to zigzag between east and west, hopefully finding those sons of bitches somewhere. Who knows where they could be at this point. Right away, ma'am, Tyler said, tone obedient to the professional. However, keep yourselves alert, Tavia warned, low voice. Contact me if you see anyone or anything. The two guards said in illusion. Such a pity to end like this, Troy, Tavia said, shaking her head, raising her gun to the sky, and fired off 2 shots, raining the echoing through the trees, shaking a few stray birds from the loose of their perches. That should bring some lurkers about. Rough him up if you want, but don't waste any more time than you have to. He doesn't deserve a quick death. With that, she turned around and almost dissolved Aldo into the thick snow. The sound of her truck humming followed on shortly, and the sound of faded. She drove away. All right, Troy, let's not make this easy for you. Vera snarled once Tavia was gone. her expression almost enraged. "Oh, I like that face on you, Vera," Troy teased, "but I think Lau would have liked it more." Vera then raised her gun, and Clementine turned around, screwing her eyes shut. She didn't see strong enough to see Troy being shot, but when she did, she essentially sacrificed himself to save her. Kenny also looked away, and the two of them sat wordlessly as the two gunshots went off. Troy's hisses of pain were loud and uninviting for walkers. Vera or Tyler were currently hurting him more. Clementine could hear the grunts of effort, followed by held-back whimpers and yelps from Troy. Once they clearly got their anger out, they stepped a few feet away from him. "All right, let's go," Vera snapped finally, shouting and sounding out of breath. "Wait, we don't have a radio," Tyler responded. "How are we supposed to contact Tavia?" Vera scoffed. "I don't give a shit. We'll figure something out." She gave another grunt as the door was opened, presumably the one on Lau and Troy's truck. "Now come on, let's go catch those bastards," she urged. It wasn't long before the other truck drove off into the distance, unknowingly leaving two behind the people they were supposed to find. But Clementine hardly cared about them at the moment, and her mind was swimming with so many conflicting emotions and thoughts. She couldn't keep them straight. Once she stopped hearing the trucks rumbling, the air grew deathly silent and still.